Well, let's bring in Peter Dickinson for more on this. He is the Ukraine editor at the Atlantic Council. Peter, thank you very much, as always, for your time. Let's just pick up there with the attack in Kramatorsk. Authorities still trying to get to the bottom of the rubble and figure out if there are any more casualties or indeed survivors. I suppose it is just a reminder that while we've all been focused on events that have been taking place in Russia over the last few days, the violence in Ukraine continues.
Indeed, yes. This was a particularly gratuitous attack. It seems to have been a targeted attack on a location which was popular with the local community and also with Western media representatives and aid workers. The town that was hit, Kramatorsk, is right close to the front lines in eastern Ukraine, so it is an area where there is a concentration of humanitarian aid workers and journalists as well. They're all very familiar with the restaurant that was hit. The Ukrainian security services have since detained someone who they believe had coordinated the strike for Russia, a local resident who was working for the Russians. But this is nothing new, unfortunately. This is the kind of attack that we are all too familiar with now in Ukraine. The message to the international community from Ukraine is again, one of how much longer can this continue?
And going back to the events in Russia over the last few days, I mean, we still don't exactly know where Evgeny Prigozhin is, the head of the Wagner Group. That remains something of a mystery. Is there a feeling amongst Ukrainian authorities that it really is the beginning of the end for Vladimir Putin, or are they still wary of the threat that Wagner poses in Ukraine?
I think it's far too early to talk about the beginning of the end, but there is a clear sense in Ukraine that Putin is badly weakened by this. The Wagner troops were by far his best troops. Some would say his only effective troops in Ukraine. They represented around 10% of the Russian invasion force in Ukraine, but they were the only troops to have actually recorded any sort of advances or successes over the past year. They are now effectively out of the war one way or another. They will not feature further. So Russia has had a significant loss in terms of its military potential, of its offensive potential in Ukraine. But perhaps more importantly, we've seen how weak Russia is internally, how weak the Putin regime is. We've seen very clearly that Putin does not enjoy the fulsome support of his own military. Most of the Russian military played a very cautious wait-and-see approach to the coup or the mutiny that took place on Friday and Saturday. They stood back and they waited. There was no real opposition to the Wagner forces, and they were able to seize the city of Rostov-on-Don, which is far larger than any of the cities they've managed to seize in Ukraine itself. So Ukrainians are certainly not yet declaring victory or declaring the end of the Putin regime, but there is a sense that Putin is severely weakened by this, and that creates opportunities for Ukraine going forward.
Well, absolutely. And the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said as much. He thought this could have a destabilizing effect on Russian forces on the battlefield. And on that front, what is the latest with Ukraine's counteroffensive?
Well, at this stage, we're still seeing very small, very minor advances. A village here, a small territory there. There have been no major gains at this point, but Ukraine is really, as far as the understanding at this point, is they're really looking just to continue with shaping operations. They're looking to test Russia along the 1,000-kilometer front line to find weaknesses and to draw Russia into firefights as well, so that Russia pulls up its reserves that are held in the second and third echelon of their defenses. And we will move closer and closer to the point where Ukraine attempts major breakthroughs. But we're not there yet. It's still very much a cagey operation. They're testing, they're probing, they're looking for weaknesses. And they have made some advances, but there's certainly nothing spectacular yet. Having said that, they have probably gained more territory in the past few weeks than Russia managed to gain in the past year, to put it into perspective. But of course, Ukraine has set the target for itself to liberate the entire occupied area of the country, which is around 20% of Ukraine. So the big fights lie ahead. At the moment, I think Ukrainians will probably be quite satisfied with how things are shaping up, but it's very, very early at this stage.
Okay, Peter, thank you very much indeed. Pleasure speaking to you as always on the News Hour.